Morning everyone. I don't really know how to kayak, certainly not one-handed and definitely not well enough to justify bringing a camera out here, but well, I've had worse mornings. Oh, good times. I was in the Lake District last week and basically I went to the Lake District for one night with an old school friend and one of his good mates, and we just went to take some photos, and I thought that on that trip I'd got enough clips to make a really good vlog. Anyway, got home and it turns out I hadn't. I mean, I got a clip of beer, I got a clip of me brushing my teeth, I got loads of clips of being attacked by midges. I mean, I don't mean to complain, as you can see it's beautiful here, but the midges, get out. Try my hardest not to moan about it, but oh my. And I also got a clip of me in this yogurt bar thing. But it turns out that that is not enough to constitute a decent vlog. So what I thought I'd do is a video I've been meaning to do for a while, which is talk about the most important part of a photo shoot, which I think is what happens after the photo shoot, actually. So there's a famous old saying, I don't know who it's by, don't know what the exact words are, but it's something to the effect of mistakes aren't mistakes if you learn from them. Does that sound familiar? And I wholeheartedly agree with that, which is why after every single photo shoot I go on, I make sure that I review all of my images very closely and check what I could have done better and what changes I could have made to improve the photos and improve myself as a photographer. And it's one of the biggest reasons I'm against the use of presets. And I've talked about this before, but outside of kind of being a wedding photographer or being in a job where you're editing thousands of images at a time, if you're looking at individual images, I really think you shouldn't use presets. You should spend as much time as you can possibly afford to spend with that particular photo, because it'll help you learn. Train track's still there. So yeah, if you're automating any part of the process, you're not potentially learning as much as you could from that image and maybe the mistakes you made in that image. So what I thought I'd do is go through some of the shots that I got on this particular trip, or that trip last week, and maybe talk through those, take you through how I kind of assess the photos and what I could have done differently, and hopefully that'll be useful. The builders are still there as well. Right, image number one, which as you can probably tell, I got with the drone. This image I think represents a problem that I've seen with a couple of images from that trip, and I've noticed it with some of my other drone shots as well, to be honest. I'm not really a capable pilot yet, I wouldn't say. I mean, I can fly the drone fine, but in terms of composing, I think I panic a bit that I'm not going to be able to get in position in time, so anytime I get a sort of okay shot or a sort of okay composition, I just press the shutter and try and get as many shots as I possibly can with it. But quite often with a drone, I don't think I nail it, and this shot is a prime example. I mean, it's midday sun, there's not a whole heap of interest going on in the image apart from this boat in the bottom third. So in any case, it's probably not an image that's going to excite anybody all that much. But the big gaping error that I see with it that I could have controlled is that the boat is kind of in this bottom third, which means that there is absolutely nothing in this middle third of the image. It's just a big expanse of boring water that's not really got anything to shout about. And I think what I maybe could have done is taken the drone lower to place the boat more in the center of the image and kind of shrink the area of the image that's just kind of blank water, and I think that would have made a bit more of an interesting composition. But to be honest, with this kind of light, it was never going to be an incredible image anyway, I don't think. However, I did make the same mistake when the light was good. So fast forward to this one, and as you can see again, we've got good light now, really good reflections on the water, but I've made pretty much the same error with putting the boat in the bottom third and just having this big, huge expanse of water that, other than a couple of reflections, is just a bit tedious. I mean, it wouldn't have been quite as bad if there hadn't been currents and wind and stuff affecting this water up here, because there would have been reflections of these mountains too. But as it is, I think the boat should have been further forward in the image, or I should have been lower and therefore compressing the amount of water that was taking up the image. And I think that would have made the composition a little bit better. That's one of the things I found with these drones, or the drone that I have, is that it's a fixed focal length, which isn't necessarily a problem. You can zoom with your propellers. But because I'm not all that experienced, I get a bit panicked about trying to find the perfect composition, particularly when you've got a moving subject, and I just end up getting in the sort of ballpark place I want to be, thinking that'll do, and just clicking away. So I need to personally get out of that habit, because I'm going to miss a lot of great photos if I don't improve. So yeah, that's a bit of an issue that I've spotted with a couple of the shots I got. Another drone image that I got the next morning. So this was the evening, that first shot was the afternoon before. So the next morning, I got up at 4 AM to get sunrise and got this shot, which broadly speaking, I'm very, very happy with. And I was super relieved there was a sunrise, because I dragged the other boys out of the camper van at 4 AM. So a couple of considerations with this image. I'm not the biggest fan of the lake and the water as it stands. As with the image I just showed you before, there's inconsistencies in the currents or the wind, whatever's causing the ripples and the kind of untidiness of the water. And there is quite a big part of me that thinks I should maybe retouch that just to kind of clean it up a bit. The other option would have been to go portrait mode, but you can't do that on the Mavic Air. The camera doesn't turn. Didn't know that before I bought it, which is completely my fault, to be honest. You can do a vertical panorama, but I was running really low on battery at this point, so I didn't have time. So I basically had to get a landscape shot, and I could of course crop into a portrait mode, but because it's only 12 megapixels anyway, and I quite like this shot as it is, I'm reluctant to do that, and I think maybe next time I'll just get portrait. I also wish I'd gone a little bit higher, just to kind of make the road and the twist in the road a bit more prominent to the story, but I don't think that actually is all that big a deal. The other minor detail that I think I would like to tweak going forward is that you can see the sun is casting this shadow of the van in front of the van, and I think there's an opportunity there, given that the van's lights are on, to have a bit of a light trail in the shadow. I think that would look quite cool, so I might do that going forward, might make that little tweak. I did get a couple of other shots of pretty much this exact composition at different times of day. So I got one at sunset the night before. Well, I say sunset, not quite sunset. You can see on top of these mountains that the sun is still present on those. But I do quite like the kind of flat light in the valley that's been formed after the sun has set in the valley. And I also quite like that the water is much tidier in this particular image. We kept the kayak on the camper van for this one as well, which I quite like. So this image actually, on second inspection, has potential. When I first looked at it versus the sunrise one, I didn't really like it all that much. I didn't really like the harsh line in the mountains, but actually it's grown on me. So maybe over the course of kind of a second stage of editing, I'll grow to like this one more than the sunrise one. There are pros and cons to each, but overall the composition I quite like. I just wish again with this one I'd gone a bit higher. Got another one earlier that day, slightly different composition. This was just when I was scouting the area with the drone, hence running out of battery when I actually needed it. As you can see, the light is super flat. This is actually a different camper van, believe it or not. It's not the same one we were using. But this is just, well, compared to the other two, the light's not as interesting. So even though I like the composition and the fact that the water's all flat and stuff, it's just, compared to the other two, this one isn't quite doing it for me. Others. Okay, more drone shots. So this one, when I saw this on the phone screen, when I had the drone up in the air, I was so excited by it. I thought it had so much potential, but I guess, again, a mix of inexperience with the drone and also the fact that I was being eaten by midges, I perhaps wasn't concentrating as much as I could, because I don't think this composition has completely nailed it for me. So as you can see, if I crop this, I don't think the image in its current proportions works all that well. I think it would be better to either have the boat right in the middle of the image or to work to the kind of rule of thirds. And as you can see, the mountains and the boat in its current state, they don't do that. I think these mountains are way too prominent in the image. I think they're actually quite distracting from the boat. I wish I'd actually taken the drone a bit higher up so that the boat looks smaller, get a much grander sense of scale. And I do wish I'd made the mountains a little bit less prominent, which would have meant kind of changing the angle of the camera a little bit. Other than that, I think it's a good composition, but I probably class this as a bit of a missed opportunity, to be honest, because I think this could have been great, but I think I've not nailed it with the composition. Another one that I took about 5 minutes later, similar story. So this was, as you can see, pointing straight down directly at the boat, and you've got the reflections of the amazing clouds above it, which I think works really, really well. I wish with this one I'd taken a bit more time to get the boat straight onto the camera. and therefore I could have either gone portrait or landscape, but the boat would have been going directly down the line of the frame. Ordinarily that's not a big deal, you can just crop and align the boat to the corners of the frame, but with this I'm hesitant to do it because, as I said before, it's only 12 megapixels and I quite like the image as it is, and I don't want to crop really heavily and lose all that resolution just for the sake of kind of changing the story a bit. It's a pros and cons game. You've got to kind of weigh up what you want. Do you want the resolution or do you want your composition that you're after? In this case, I think the resolution is just about edging it because I still think it's a cool shot, even though it's not composed exactly how I would have chosen. Anyway, that'll do it for drone shots for now, I think. This one was taken by the lakeside pretty much just after sunset, as you can probably tell. I've pulled out the colours a bit. That's the original, that's afterwards. And I'd say I'm quite happy with this image. I mean, the subject is right bang in the middle of this reflection of the mountain, which I quite like, but I don't think I've composed this correctly. I think there's not necessarily any need for both the sky and the reflection of the sky. I think it's kind of a case of one or the other would have made for a better image. And I think the reflection of the sky is much more interesting than the sky itself, and therefore what I'd have been tempted to do, what I still might do, is just crop in like so to leave the boat at the top line of thirds, make the mountains much more prominent, the sky less so, and really bring that water into focus a bit. I think that makes for a much more compelling image than including both the sky and the water, which basically tell the same story. So clearly here I wasn't concentrating enough on the composition, as with all the others, to be honest, and it's a bit of a missed opportunity. Not such a big deal with this one because it's the G9, so I've got 20 megapixels. Cropping isn't necessarily a problem at all, but yeah, in an ideal world I wouldn't have to crop because I'd have composed correctly. What else can I show you? This image, which was taken just before sunset, I'm not so sure of. I think it looks a bit cliche, a little bit stalky. I think going forward I'll have to change the colour of the boat. I think it blends in too much to the other colours in the frame. Maybe kind of a deep red or something would work a bit better. I also think that I wish I hadn't focused on the boat. I wish I'd focused on the trees in the foreground and had the boat blurred in the background. I think that would have made for a much more interesting shot and composition. As I say, I think this just looks a bit cliche and a bit stalky, so that's maybe what I'd do differently with this shot in the future. This one, I mean, I'm not going to read too much into this, it's just a snapshot of Gwyn's legs. It's quite nice. This was shortly after sunrise, as you can probably tell, and I really like that this mountain is perfectly reflected and Gwyn is on the canoe, the kayak, sorry, sitting within the reflection. What I don't like so much about this image is there is so much going on. There's kind of rocks down here, there's fairly unattractive clouds that are reflected in the water too. I think what I should do maybe is crop and kind of really get down into the story and take away some of the distractions and really make you focus in on some of those really nice reflections and silhouettes and shadows and stuff. Alternatively, I could even turn it into a landscape image, which I think actually might work even better because Gwyn is sat right on the right line of thirds, and you get rid of all the distracting cloud and you just have the mountains in the silhouette. I quite like that. So that's maybe what I think for that kind of image. Again, just not really concentrating properly. I did get hundreds of these images actually, so maybe I did get the right composition. I just haven't been through them all yet. And finally, this image I got on the way home from the trip. This was driving back down towards the main roads from Wastwater. I don't know how to say the name of the lake. As you'll have guessed, I can't do pronunciations of any kind. I really like this image. I think it's quite emotive. Quite a few people, when I posted this on Instagram, mentioned that it just made them think of hay fever and pollen and summer and stuff straight away. So I quite like that. I think it kind of obviously evokes emotions, which I think is one of the signs of a good image. There's just one thing I've done a bit differently with this, which is I wish I'd taken more care with the perspective of the van. So if you zoom in, for example, you can see that the wheels are kind of chopped off by this grassy area, which I think is a little bit of a shame, and certainly for a commercial image that would look a bit untidy. So I wish I'd maybe experimented a little bit more with perspective, and that might have meant to kind of keep the flowers in shot, that I'd maybe have to find like a little hump with flowers so that could be higher up but also still have the flowers in shot, something along those lines. But I didn't really have time to do that because we just pulled over at the side of the road. You know, I couldn't really say to the guys, oh, can you move the van 15 inches this way and 12 inches this way and bit to the left, bit to the right. it wasn't that sort of day. We were all quite tired after 3 hours sleeping and wanted to get home. So this is more of a snapshot, but as a snapshot, I'm quite pleased with it. Yeah, and that is a very speedy review of some of the images that I took on that trip. And the point here, and the point that I'm trying to make really, is that this is a really important process, not kind of just diving into your images and going, right, what can I do with these colours? It's looking at the image and thinking, right, what can I learn from this? What can I do better next time? Because I've found in my experience that that is by far the fastest way I learn. Yes, you can watch videos like this. Yes, you can read books about photography. Yes, you can go and do photography courses. But typically I find that people, and certainly me, learn much faster by studying their own work and wondering what they might have done differently if they had their time again, or what they might do differently next time. So that's what I'd advise, spending time with your images after you've taken them. If you've taken thousands, it can be a bit of a pain of a process, but I think it's worth it. And if you sit with a coffee or a beer or some food that you like or something, then actually it can be quite enjoyable as well. So yeah, that's what I'd suggest. I'm gonna go to the shop now and find some more of those yogurt things, because actually they were quite nice. But yeah, I won't bring you along for that journey because I don't think that'll be vlog worthy either, to be honest. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. And if you get a chance, take a look at your images, delve a bit deeper and wonder what you can do differently next time. Yeah, see you later.